You want to get into rhythm with that of the earth. And I know people start to think like, oh, that's too woo-woo. We've got electricity now, we've got all this biohacking, but we can never let that supersede our ability and our want to take advantage of what is true foundational based health. All right, everybody, we are back with a brand new Cabral concept. This is our Wellness and Weight Loss Wednesday show. The topic of the week for this Wednesday is going to be a type of intermittent fasting that I've been a proponent of for decades, and that is called Circadian Intermittent fasting. If you haven't heard it before, I want to give you an explanation. I think it will make sense. If you've ever looked at traditional Chinese medicine, or you've looked at Ayurvedic medicine, or any of the Eastern-based forms of medicine, the original forms of medicine, you'll understand where I'm going with this and how they use this to their advantage, and even seasonally, because it changes seasonally to a degree. So what circadian refers to as the circadian rhythm, not only of our body, but of the earth itself. Circadian is the amount of essentially hours of sunlight per day, and then the amount of hours of darkness. And what it really refers to as sleep and wake. But it refers to a much greater picture than you may be thinking about. So you want to look at it this way. The earth also has a period of sleep and wake. And we know this, if anybody's ever looked at herbs before or studied flowers or anything like that, we know that as it starts to move towards dusk, the flowers, certain flowers actually begin to close up. And you can think of that as their hibernation period or their anabolic phase, where they're essentially rebuilding. And humans, it would be akin to sleeping, right? It'd be kind of like turning the lights down, getting ready for bed, going to bed. And then the next morning, as the sun begins to rise, those flowers begin to open. And that is them getting their nutrition for the day. That's the way to look at it. And they close when the sun goes down. That's when they start to, as they say, rest and digest from the day. Not eat more food, but digest. Now, this changes, right? So in the summertime, think about it. You might have sunlight from 6 a.m. to 9 p.m. So if you're looking at that, that's what, like 15 hours of sunlight. So it's quite a bit of time, or actually be about 15 hours. Now, for other parts of the year, it's 12 hours of sunlight. You might have sun from, let's say, 7 to 7. During the winter time, you may only have sun from 8 a.m. or so to about 4:35 p.m., especially around the Boston, Massachusetts area. So when you look at that, you're saying, wow, I'm only getting 9 hours, of sunlight per day. So when I talk about circadian intermittent fasting, I really revel back or I refer back to the ancient traditions of Ayurvedic medicine, where true knowledge comes from. When we look at Ayurveda, it means the science of life or the truth of life. And what they talked about was that you want to get into rhythm with that of the earth. And I know people start to think like, oh, that's too woo-woo. We've got electricity now. We've got all this biohacking. It's not that I'm against any of that. Like, I get it and I use it myself. I'm a big advocate of all these healthy biohacks that we can do. But we can never let that supersede our ability and our want to take advantage of what is true foundational based health, right? True foundational based health is the foods that we were given to eat, the sleep that we need and are required for our body, not try to hack our way to less sleep, right? So that's what we want to look at. And today I just want to focus on the nutrition part of it. So what we've used in our practice for many years, before people were talking about intermittent fasting, before we called it intermittent fasting, was there was a period of digest and rest, and there was a period of nutrition, of taking in food and expending energy. And a lot of times it looks like, well, these are the waking light hours, and that makes sense. And I'm going to refer back to the nurses study and a few other things in just one moment. But what you would do is, let's say you woke up at 6 a.m. It's still dark out. Sun rose around 7:30. Okay, well, if we were working with a natural circadian rhythm, and humans have one more rhythm called a diurnal rhythm. Diurnal rhythm is basically the waking hours, and the other part of that diurnal rhythm too, right, is the sleep. Well, you don't need to eat immediately upon waking, right? 0.1% or so of the population may, because they have hypoglycemia, there's certain things going on. Totally get it. Once they correct those problems, they won't, right? So that's okay. So there's a time and place for everything. And I agree with pretty much everything for a specific time and place, but not as a foundational health-based protocol. All right, so you wake up at 6 o'clock, it's still dark out, your body's still processing, there's no light, you have not worked into the waking hour of the day, you're moving into it because that's life, right? You don't necessarily just wake up with the sun on a daily basis. But that sun rises at 7:30, you then very well may begin eating at 8 a.m. But there's another part to this as well, because if you are someone that says, well, my dinner is at 7, 8 o'clock at night, you are coming up against the natural rhythms of the earth, where the body, once it starts to see the change, right, from blue light in the morning to moving towards more of the reds and other colors from the sun setting, your body is actually, it knows that it's supposed to be winding down. Cortisol levels begin to drop. Excitatory neurotransmitters like dopamine and norepinephrine begin to drop. Serotonin begins to rise. Melatonin begins to rise. But those get thrown off if you put another big meal into the system, because another big meal requires more energy. So instead of winding down, you're winding up. And so what I want to lay out for you is a plan right now that I think will be really helpful. So seasonally it can change. Believe it or not, this is the truth. Believe it or not, you can actually eat dinner a little bit later during the summer. You can even go to bed a little bit later during the summer. And that is because there's more hours of sunlight. There's more energy that your body can be taking in. Now, all of that recommendations and suggestions go out the window if you're dealing with a chronic disease where you need to go to bed at the same time every day, wake up at the same time. And to be honest, I still recommend that. In the summertime, I probably do go to bed a half hour later than I ordinarily would. But I try not to, like the Monday through Thursday, but it's always within a half hour. And the reason is that you want to set up those circadian rhythms and stick to it. So your body's wired to know when it wakes up each day within a half hour, goes to bed within a half hour each day, so it's making its melatonin at the right time. And then also it knows when it's eating. So if you eat within a half hour of the same time every day, now your body's ready for food. It's ready to begin stirring up those digestive juices, right? And then you don't get such fatigue and bloating and gas and acid reflux because you're working with the natural circadian rhythms. So for most people, let's say, the question I might get, but I still want to do a 16-8 diet. Okay, so you want to do a 16-8, which means that you want to fast for 16 hours and you want to eat for 8 hours. Totally get it. Well, a 16-8 can be done by eating at 9 a.m. and finishing by 5. So you can have breakfast at 9, lunch between 12 and 1, and finishing up dinner right at 5 p.m. And there you have it. Like that's literally your 8 hours, 16-8. Now, if you wanted to push it a bit, because the earlier you finish dinner, the better. But let's just say based on light, all of those things, 9:30 to 5:30. Start dinner at 5, start your breakfast at 9:30. You get 3 meals. You can get in all your micros, all your macros without having to jam them into one massive meal. And you're able to then better follow the circadian rhythm of the earth. I'm telling you right now, if you do this, you're going to have more energy. Your digestion is going to be better, and you're going to lose weight more naturally if you need to. If you don't need to lose weight, you won't lose weight. Your body's going to return to a better state of homeostasis. Okay, the other is this. I want to share with you what most people in our practice do. Because they have a family, they have a job, they can't necessarily eat dinner at 5, right? But they want to stay within a normal circadian rhythm as best they can. They know that for the majority of the year, the sun is setting somewhere between like 6 and 8, right? So what they do is they set up a schedule to eat from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. and they get 14 hours of intermittent fasting in on a daily basis. And that seems to work really well. I've done multiple podcasts on the 14 hours. I've done it on how it's used more for chronic-based conditions and diseases to put less stress in the body. And just, again, when you've been in practice long enough, you figure these things out without even the scientific research. It's just because it's through trial and error. So we've been doing this for so long that when I saw a study come out a few years ago that shows, they were doing this with people with high blood pressure and glucose and all those things. If you pushed it to 16 hours, it seemed to be a greater stress on the body. Because if you delay breakfast too long, it's a greater potential spike in excitatory neurotransmitters and cortisol, et cetera, which could lead to fluctuations in blood sugar. And I have lots of podcasts on those as well I can link up. But if someone's eating by 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock, then they're able to then buffer a lot of the stress of the day, the stress of the morning, because the morning can be a stressful time. But if they finish dinner by 6, so if they have dinner around 5:30 or 6 o'clock or so, then they're able to still get all those hours before midnight. And if they're going to bed by 10, they're getting 4 hours of fasting before bed, which is phenomenal, because the more hours before bed that you can stop eating, believe it or not, the improvement you'll see in HRV and a drop in resting heart rate, improvement in all across the board will be so much better. Better deep sleep, et cetera. So what we've seen in our practice is starting in around 8 or 9 in the morning. This is given that it's a couple hours after waking. That's it. So basically, if you wake up at 6, you might start eating by 8. If you wake up at 7, you might start eating by 9. Like, it's pretty straightforward. We have some deviations on that based on your specific goals. But anyway, we'll keep it at that for right now. And then stop eating if you can by 6 o'clock. The earlier, the better. Now you're within the natural circadian rhythm of nature, of the earth. You stop 3 to 4 hours before going to bed, you're eating, and you get to reap all of those benefits. So I wanted to bring this to you here today. And before you either say, I'm all in, or this is the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard, all I want you to do is, if possible, keep an open mind. We've seen it work tremendously. We work with hundreds of thousands of clients. We've seen it work tremendously well. Obviously, it can be tweaked if you're working with an integrative health practitioner or a practitioner that's working with you on these specific things. But if you keep an open mind and you give it a shot for at least 2 to 3 weeks, I think you will see a marked difference. Hopefully this was helpful. Do feel free to pass this show along to anyone you believe it will serve. And don't forget to tune back in tomorrow, because we're going to be doing a follow-up from last week and actually looking at how strong your core is and why this is so important as you begin to age. I'm going to give you a specific test to be able to look at it. All right, take care, everybody. Thanks so much for tuning into today's show. Before you go, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. I want to make sure that you're getting our daily content, not missing out on anything functional medicine, wellness, weight gain, weight loss, anti-aging, living longer, stronger, and all of the most cutting-edge research. And if there's any topics you want to hear, feel free to leave them in the comments below. Take care.